Have you ever witnessed a moment so raw, so powerful, that it rewrites everything you thought you knew about survival and about love? On a blazing Arizona highway, as cars rushed past in shimmering heat, a wounded mother bobcat clawed her way across the burning asphalt. Her body was battered, her pain obvious, but she would not stop, because in the tall grass, her tiny kitten was calling for her, clinging to life as the world sped by. What happened next would test not just the limits of instinct, but the boundaries of compassion, both wild and human. If stories like this move you, give this video a like. And if you want to follow more true miracles from the animal world, hit subscribe and join our community. Stay with us, because this is the true story of Ashes and Ember, a mother's courage, a kitten's will to survive, and the people who chose hope over rules. The Arizona sun bore down like a curse, baking the two-lane highway until the air rippled above the asphalt in ghostly waves. It was one of those high summer afternoons when even the vultures circled low and slow, waiting for something to happen. Cars blasted through, air conditioners whirring, drivers squinting behind sunglasses, not thinking about anything but reaching the next patch of shade. But in the parched grass, at the edge of the road, the rules of survival were being rewritten. Out of the brittle silence came a sound that didn't belong. The desperate, stuttering cry of a wild bobcat kitten. Her fur was a patchwork of dirty gold and soot gray, her body shaking with each feeble mew. Every time she tried to lift her head, it flopped back down. She was all ribs and wide eyes, her little claws clutching at the gravel as if the ground itself might swallow her whole. 100 yards away, hidden among the withered weeds, another figure stirred. Ashes, a full-grown bobcat with scars running like pale rivers through her pelt, forced herself upright. The pain in her hind legs was a living thing, a molten, gnawing presence that threatened to blot out everything else. But the cry of her kitten cut through the haze of agony. Instinct and love, something far wilder than fear, drove her forward. The first step was a crawl, her front legs digging into the dirt, dragging the useless weight of her back half. She hissed as a rock bit into her paw. Blood welled, dark and sticky, but she didn't stop. Her ears pinned back against the roar of the passing trucks, the blare of a horn, then the shriek of tires as a car swerved too late and sent a sheet of hot wind and dust over her battered body. Someone in a pickup skidded to a halt, the driver's door banging open. "What the? Is that a bobcat?" shouted a voice thick with alarm and disbelief. "Somebody call animal control!" A woman in a faded baseball cap and sunglasses fumbled with her phone, hands shaking. "There's a baby! Oh God, there's a baby over there! Look!" The world became a chaos of noise. Engines idling, horns honking, people yelling. But Ashes heard only her kitten's cries. Her vision tunneled, everything except that tiny, trembling body, blurring into a river of heat and pain. A delivery truck thundered past, its wake nearly flipping her onto her side. She clawed at the cracked tar, forcing herself to keep moving. One lane, too, the cars slowed. Heads popped out of windows, cameras recording, strangers too shocked to intervene. But Ashes was moving faster now, propelled by sheer will, by the force of something ancient and relentless in her blood. Her breathing came in sharp, broken pants, the world spinning every time she paused. She could taste metal, her own blood filling her mouth. A teenage boy in a tie-dye shirt darted from the shoulder, waving his arms to stop the traffic. "Hold up! Hold up! Let her go! She's going for the baby!" Ashes didn't know about mercy, didn't know about help or hope. All she knew was Ember, her kitten, the last living thing she cared about in a world that had become nothing but pain and fire. She closed the final distance as a sedan screeched to a halt inches from her tail, the driver pounding the wheel in frustration and fear. The edge of the road was a wall of burning stones. She hauled herself up, her front claws scraping for purchase, and finally collapsed in a heap beside her kitten. Ember gave one last weak cry, stretching out a trembling paw. Ashes pressed her head against her daughter's side, licking the frail fur with what little strength she had left. For a second, everything stilled. The traffic, the people, the world itself seemed to pause and watch, a wild mother and her dying child, clinging together at the edge of oblivion. But the danger hadn't passed. A semi roared by, rattling the ground and making both bobcats flinch. Someone shouted, "Get back! It's not safe!" The teenager grabbed the woman's arm, pulling her away from the shoulder. Other drivers leaned out, debating whether to intervene or wait for animal control. Ash's sides heaved with every ragged breath. She curled herself around Ember, shielding her as best she could, even as her own consciousness flickered. The pain in her legs was numbing now, spreading cold through her belly. She could smell the kitten's fear, her own blood, the oily tang of exhaust. The woman in the baseball cap knelt at the edge, tears streaking her dust-stained face. "Hang on, Mama," she whispered. "Somebody's coming. Just hang on." A distant siren wailed, growing louder. Hope and dread crashed together. A rescue, or another threat. Ashes, wild and wounded, stared up at the humans with eyes full of defiance and terror. Would they save her and her kitten, or finish what the highway had started? The answer was only moments away, but for Ashes and Ember, those moments stretched on, a trembling heartbeat between life and death. The sirens wailed louder, their cry cutting through the heavy Arizona air. Dust spun in tight spirals as a green Wildlife Services SUV screeched onto the shoulder, red and blue lights flashing. Out sprang Dr. Jamie Bennett, ponytail tucked through the back of her hat, medical bag slung over her shoulder. Jamie's hands never shook, not in emergencies, not even in the field, but as she slammed the door and sized up the chaos, her heart skipped. She'd seen plenty of wildlife rescues, but nothing like this. Ranger Mike Foster jumped out after her, gruff and practical, but with a face that always softened for animals. "We gotta stop the traffic, Jamie. You go." Jamie didn't waste a second. "Everybody stay back," she shouted. "Let us through." The crowd parted, a few phones still recording. Mike moved like a linebacker, planting himself in the middle of the closest lane, arms wide, forcing cars to stop in both directions. Jamie hurried forward, crouching a few yards from the bobcats. She could see the mother's heaving sides, the blood matting her rear legs, the way she curled herself around the limp kitten, protecting it with the last flicker of her strength. Jamie's voice softened. "Hey, girl. You're okay now. We're gonna help you. That's it. I'm not here to hurt you." Ashes flattened her ears, a low, warning growl in her throat, but she was barely able to lift her head. Jamie recognized the look. Not just pain, but desperation. The wild resolve of a mother with nothing left but the urge to protect. "Mike, I need towels now," Jamie barked, her gloved hands steady as she slid closer. She could smell the metallic tang of blood, the pungent musk of fear. The air shimmered with heat. The kitten, Ember, wasn't moving, just a shivering, feeble bundle pressed tight to her mother's belly. Mike threw her the towels, eyes on the traffic. "We've only got a few minutes. Next semi might not see us until it's too late." Jamie glanced up. The crowd sensed the danger. Some stood as human shields, arms outstretched, holding back drivers who were now honking impatiently, frustration giving way to concern as they realized what was at stake. With a deep breath, Jamie made her move. She slid the thick towel gently over Ash's head, talking soft and low. "Easy, Mama. Easy." Ashes let out a rasping snarl, but her claws barely grazed the cloth before her body sagged, the last fight leaking out. Jamie quickly bundled Ember up, feeling how light she was, bones and fur, barely alive. She nodded to Mike. "Go, get the carrier." Mike sprinted to the SUV, grabbing the hard plastic crate. Jamie used the towels to cradle both Mother and Kitten, slipping them into the carrier together. She could feel Ash's shallow breath, the kitten's fluttering heartbeat. As she closed the door, a wave of relief and fear hit her. They'd survived the highway, but only barely. Back at the vehicle, Jamie worked fast. She hooked up IV fluids for Ashes, whispering encouragement as she slid the needle into a vein. "Stay with me, girl. Your baby needs you." Mike steadied Ember, wiping dirt from her nose. "Come on, little one, hang in there." The crowd began to disperse, some wiping tears, others lingering, hoping for a miracle. Jamie caught the eye of the woman in the baseball cap. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You probably saved their lives." The woman nodded, voice shaking. "Just don't let them die out here." Jamie's chest tightened. "We'll do everything we can." They loaded the carrier into the back of the SUV, Mike sliding into the driver's seat, urgency tightening his jaw. "Hospital's 20 minutes out. I'll light it up. Hang on." As they sped down the highway, Jamie monitored her patience, the car bouncing over potholes. Ashes was fading, her eyes half shut, chest barely moving. Ember didn't respond at all, her little body limp in the towel. The Wildlife Hospital was a white building at the edge of town, surrounded by fences and rows of battered cages. Jamie burst through the double doors, calling for backup. "Critical. 2 Bobcats, 1 adult, 1 neonate. Severe trauma, both unresponsive." Inside, the air was cool, filled with the sharp smell of antiseptic and animal musk. Techs rushed forward, hands gloved, eyes wide. Jamie issued rapid-fire orders. "IV fluids, stat. I need a full exam, x-rays, heat support, move." They laid Ashes and Ember on adjacent tables. The protocol was clear. Separate adults and neonates for safety, focus on stabilization. But as soon as they were apart, Ashes started thrashing weakly, her breathing faltering. Ember's temperature dropped, heart rate skipping. Jamie cursed under her breath. "She's crashing. Give her oxygen." Ember barely stirred. Ashes, hearing her kitten's soft cry from across the room, let out a hoarse, broken yowl. The sound silenced the room for a heartbeat. Mike pulled Jamie aside, his voice urgent. "What do we do? The rules say keep them apart, but look at her." Jamie's mind raced. Training said one thing, her gut said another. "Bring the kitten over, just for a second," she ordered. A tech hesitated, then placed Ember beside her mother. Ashes immediately stretched her neck, licking Ember's ear, purring a faint, shuddering rumble. Within minutes, Ash's vital signs stabilized, her heart rate settling, breaths growing stronger. Ember, pressed into her mother's warmth, stopped trembling. The staff exchanged glances, something like hope flickering in their eyes. Jamie closed her eyes, breathing out the tension she'd carried since the highway. For now, both were alive. But the fight for survival had only begun, and the rules, written or not, would have to bend to a mother's love. Inside the Wildlife Hospital, tension hung in the air like a storm that refused to break. The buzz of fluorescent lights hummed above the rows of cages and stainless steel tables. But all Jamie could hear was the shallow, rasping breaths of Ashes and the soft, pitiful whimpers of Ember. In the chaos of the initial emergency, adrenaline had masked the severity of their conditions. Now, with the animals temporarily stable, a different anxiety took hold. What next? Standard protocol was clear. Injured adults and vulnerable young were never kept together. It was safer for both patient and staff. Adult bobcats, especially wild ones, could turn vicious in pain, and even a mother might lash out if disoriented or frightened. For years, Jamie had enforced those rules herself, having seen enough bad outcomes to know why they existed. But nothing about Ashes and Ember fit the standard. Ashes had refused all food and water since their arrival, her head constantly turning toward the smaller cage where Ember was kept. Each time Ember let out a weak mew, Ashes responded with a guttural, broken yowl. The sound unsettled the entire staff. Jamie checked Ashes's vitals, blood pressure dropping, oxygen saturation lower every hour. Her hind legs were cold, the wounds severe, the paralysis not improving. It was clear. Separated from her kitten, Ashes was giving up. Ember wasn't faring much better. Without her mother's touch, she shivered even under the warming lamp, refusing the bottle. Her eyes flickered open and shut, unfocused, as if she were drifting further away with each passing minute. Jamie's gut twisted. She saw too many cases end like this. Animals brought in from the edge, only to slip away in a place that felt nothing like home. The staff huddled in the hallway, voices hushed but urgent. "We're losing both," said Megan, the senior tech, worry creasing her brow. "If we can't stabilize them, there's not much more we can do. Should we try different sedation?" "It's not just the injuries," Jamie said. "It's—" She hesitated, fighting for words that didn't sound ridiculous. "They're grieving. Separating them is making things worse." Mike, arms folded, leaned against the wall. "That's not what the manual says." Jamie bristled. "Maybe the manual's wrong, at least for this case." The medical director, Dr. Lin, joined them, clipboard in hand. "I know this is hard, Jamie, but if we put them in the same enclosure, Ashes could hurt Ember, accidentally or not. Plus, what does that say to our donors and regulators? We have protocols for a reason." Jamie felt the old frustration bubbling up. Memories of animals lost because she'd followed the book instead of her instincts. She forced herself to stay calm. "With respect, Dr. Lin, I'm not convinced that separation is safer. I'm convinced it's killing them. Look at the data. Every time we bring Ember close, Ashes stabilizes. Every time we take her away, they both decline." Megan glanced at the monitors. "She's right. Their heart rates drop when they're together. I've never seen anything like it." The director hesitated. "You're asking me to break the most basic rule of wildlife rehab." Jamie looked through the glass at Ashes, who was staring at the door with empty eyes. "I'm asking you to let a mother be with her baby, just for a night. If there's any sign of aggression, we separate immediately." The room fell silent. Mike finally spoke, his voice softer than usual. "I'll stay here all night. If anything goes wrong, I'll be the first to jump in." Dr. Lin exhaled, pinching the bridge of her nose. "One night. One. You're responsible, Jamie." Jamie nodded, barely able to keep the emotion out of her voice. "Thank you. We'll monitor everything." With trembling hands, Jamie and Megan prepared a larger enclosure, filling it with soft bedding and warming pads. They carried Ashes in first, laying her gently in the corner. Then, with infinite care, Megan cradled Ember, still so light it broke Jamie's heart, and placed her beside her mother. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Ashes, with the last of her strength, pulled Ember close, curling her body around the kitten. She began to groom Ember's head, rough tongue licking away the dirt and fear. Ember let out a tiny, almost questioning chirp, then pressed herself into her mother's chest and began to purr. A faint vibration, but unmistakable. The effect was immediate. Ash's breathing steadied, her eyes brightening for the first time since the highway. Ember stopped shivering, her body relaxing into sleep. The staff watched through the glass, speechless. "Vitals are climbing," Megan whispered, eyes glued to the monitors. Jamie grabbed her phone and started filming. "We're witnessing something special here," she murmured, her voice trembling. "We need to remember this, whatever happens next." Hours passed. Jamie stayed by the window, updating notes and monitoring vitals. At midnight, Mike brought coffee, both of them quietly marveling at the scene. Even Dr. Lin, who rarely showed emotion, stopped by to watch, lips pursed, face softening just a little. In the small hours, Jamie let herself hope. For once, breaking the rules had brought a spark of life back to two souls who'd been all but lost. She closed her eyes and promised herself she wouldn't let bureaucracy get in the way of what was right. That night, as the hospital quieted and the desert cooled, the only sound in the enclosure was the gentle rumble of a mother's purr, a lullaby to ward off death, and perhaps, just maybe, invite in a miracle. By sunrise, a fragile peace had settled over the wildlife hospital. For the first time since the frantic rescue, Jamie let herself unclench her fists and breathe deeply. Through the glass, she watched Ashes and Ember huddled in the warmth of their shared enclosure, two battered souls clinging to each other as the world spun on outside. The hum of the early morning, coffee brewing, techs muttering over charts, felt softer, more hopeful. Ashes, though paralyzed from the waist down, had become a force of calm for her kitten. Each hour, she licked Ember's ears and nose with the careful patience only a mother could muster. Whenever Ember woke, disoriented and trembling, Ashes pressed her chin against the kitten's tiny head, humming a rough, guttural purr that seemed to ground them both in the present. Jamie documented everything, knowing that what was happening in that enclosure went beyond textbook medicine. The monitors tracked Ash's slow but steady improvement. Her breathing stronger, her heart rate more stable, even as her hind legs remained limp. Ember, once a limp scrap of fur, now responded to her mother's touch, eyes blinking open, paws kneading the blankets, small tail twitching in uncertain excitement. The hospital staff, at first skeptical, now drifted past the window more and more, drawn to the unfolding miracle. Megan, always the most cynical, set her coffee on the counter and watched in silence as Ashes methodically groomed Ember's tangled fur. "I've never seen anything like it," she whispered, as if afraid to break the spell. "It's like the kitten's coming back to life right in front of us." Mike lingered too, his rough exterior melting as he watched mother and child. "You think she knows we're trying to help?" he murmured, nodding toward Ashes. Jamie smiled, exhaustion softening her features. "She knows. At least, she knows we didn't give up on her. That counts for something." The hospital's director, Dr. Lin, entered the room quietly. She'd been watching the monitors, double-checking charts, balancing science with the reality unfolding before her. "Whatever this is," she said quietly, "we're not interfering. Just observe and record. We need to learn from this." Ember began to mew, a thin, wobbly sound that grew stronger as Ashes licked her head. Jamie crouched, camera in hand, capturing the way Ember pressed her face into her mother's chest, eyes brightening with each touch. "Look at that," Jamie whispered. "Her reflexes are coming back. She's got strength in her legs again. This shouldn't be possible." The word spread quickly through the hospital. Staff who'd once doubted the decision to keep the pair together now became advocates, marveling at the effect of the bond. Some scribbled notes for their research. Others, inspired, simply watched and learned. Outside, the world kept moving. The rescue had already made waves on social media. A bystander's shaky cell phone video had gone viral overnight. "Wild Bobcat crawls across highway to save Kitten," the headline screamed, accompanied by blurry images of Ashes dragging herself through traffic, Ember's tiny form visible in the background. Jamie knew the story had power, the kind that could change minds and challenge assumptions about wildness, motherhood, and healing. She posted a carefully edited video from the hospital, showing Ashes gently grooming Ember, their purrs audible even over the hospital's noise. The clip ended with Ember, for the first time, reaching out with a paw to touch her mother's whiskers. Within hours, the video had thousands of views, comments pouring in from all over the world. "Never seen anything so moving. Are they going to make it? This proves animals have souls. And more than one. Please let them stay together." For Jamie, the response was bittersweet. She knew that happy endings were rare in wildlife rehab. Ash's injuries were severe, and there was no guarantee Ember would recover enough to survive on her own, much less in the wild. But for now, the miracle was real, a living testament to the power of connection. Days passed. The hospital fell into a new routine, built around the rhythms of the bobcats. Every morning, Jamie checked on Ashes and Ember first, making sure they had fresh bedding and quiet time. Ember began to play in tentative spurts, batting at loose threads, mewing at the window when Jamie came near. Ashes watched her closely, her gaze bright and protective. One afternoon, Jamie recorded a video for her records. "Ashes is grooming Ember again. That purring is getting louder," and Ember just rolled over, exposing her belly. "That's trust." She turned the camera on herself, her face raw with emotion. "I don't know what comes next, but this is hope." The staff started making bets, friendly but full of real investment, on what miracle might happen next. "You think Ashes is going to walk again?" Megan asked, half smiling. "Wouldn't be the first time something wild happened in this place." Mike grunted, glancing at the enclosure. "If any cat can do it, it's her." Night after night, Jamie stayed late, watching, recording, sometimes dozing in a chair outside the enclosure. She scribbled notes on the ways Ember responded to Ash's every movement, how the kitten's energy seemed to rise and fall with her mother's touch. Sometimes she caught Ashes watching her back, golden eyes meeting Jamie's with something like understanding, or maybe gratitude. The hospital's halls, usually filled with the quiet sorrow of lost causes, now buzzed with cautious hope. Staff from other wards dropped by. Students asked for updates. Even the janitor left little treats at the door. Everyone wanted to be close to the miracle. And through it all, Ashes and Ember clung to each other. In a world that so often separated, isolated, and broke bonds in the name of survival, these two wild creatures, through pain, fear, and near death, proved that sometimes the most powerful medicine was love. It started with the smallest twitch, so slight, Jamie almost thought she imagined it. She'd arrived at the hospital before dawn, tired but eager, clutching her coffee as she made her rounds. Through the glass of the enclosure, she watched Ashes and Ember snuggled together in their corner, the kitten already awake and bright-eyed, swatting gently at her mother's ears. Jamie pulled out her phone, ready to film the morning routine. She'd gotten in the habit of documenting every moment, both for research and for the growing crowd of online supporters. As she focused the camera, Ember nosed a small fabric mouse toy toward her mother's outstretched paw, mewing in encouragement. Ashes responded by lifting her head, giving Ember a slow blink. Then, for the first time since her rescue, the toes on her back foot curled, just barely. Jamie gasped. She hurried into the enclosure, careful not to disturb the pair, and crouched low. "Come on, Ashes. You can do it." Ember mewed louder, pawing at her mother as if cheering her on. Ashes's leg twitched again, this time more pronounced, a ripple of muscle from hip to paw. The news spread like wildfire through the hospital. Megan ran to grab the director, Dr. Lynn, who stood with arms folded, skepticism written on her face. Jamie replayed the footage, her hands shaking with excitement. "Look, she's moving her leg. It's not much, but it's real." Megan stared at the video. "Is it just a spasm? Could it be reflex?" Jamie shook her head. "No way. Watch how she tries when Ember nudges her. There's intent. She's fighting." Dr. Lynn studied the footage, then looked through the glass at the Bobcats. "We'll keep monitoring. But don't get ahead of yourself, Jamie. Paralysis like that doesn't just disappear." But Jamie wasn't about to let anyone dim her hope. She returned to the enclosure, settling outside with her laptop, determined to record every detail. Ember, sensing something was different, became even more energetic. She rolled the toy mouse farther away, then sat back and waited. Ashes, breathing hard, fixed her gaze on the toy and, with trembling effort, dragged her paw an inch forward. It became a routine, Ember inventing little challenges, Jamie capturing each attempt, the staff cheering quietly from the other side of the glass. Every hour brought another tiny milestone, a stretch, a twitch, a foot dragging an inch closer to where Ember waited. For the first time, laughter and optimism filled the hospital, staff placing friendly bets on what Ashes would do next. By the third day, the story of the miracle Bobcats had taken on a life of its own. Local news crews called non-stop, begging for interviews. Animal lovers from around the country sent messages of support, toys, and donations. Jamie found herself responding to emails late into the night, moved by how many people cared about these two wild, untamable hearts. The real breakthrough came one afternoon when Ember, emboldened by her mother's progress, placed the toy mouse just out of Ashes's reach and mewed expectantly. Ashes, eyes focused and body trembling with effort, braced her front legs and pushed. Her hindquarters lifted, wobbled, and miraculously shifted forward. She managed a single unsteady step before collapsing back onto the bedding, panting but victorious. Jamie, who'd watched the entire effort on her monitor, burst into tears. She called Megan and Dr. Lynn, who came running. She moved. She actually moved her legs. Megan knelt at Jamie's side, staring at Ashes in awe. "I never thought I'd see it. She's rewriting the rule book." Dr. Lynn's eyes softened, her tone warmer than Jamie had ever heard. "Don't stop recording. The world needs to see this." The hospital's social media accounts exploded after Jamie posted the clip. Within hours, the video of Ashes dragging herself after Ember's encouragement racked up hundreds of thousands of views. "Miracle Bobcat walks again!" headlines blared. The pair became internet sensations, their unlikely recovery giving hope to thousands who watched and waited for updates. But even as hope soared, Jamie stayed grounded. She knew recovery was never a straight line. Some days, Ashes's progress stalled. On others, she seemed weaker, her breathing rough, her eyes dull. Ember, too, had setbacks. Days when she refused to eat or slept too much, her little body fighting to keep up. Jamie and the team stayed vigilant, adjusting care plans, ensuring both cats had everything they needed: food, warmth, medicine, and, most importantly, each other. One night, long after visiting hours had ended, Jamie returned to the enclosure with a blanket. She found Ashes struggling, her legs twitching as if in a dream. Ember was curled beside her, mewing softly. Jamie sat down, feeling the weight of responsibility settle over her. She whispered, "You've come so far. Don't give up now. The world's rooting for you, both of you." Ashes opened her eyes, and for just a moment, Jamie swore she understood. As the days passed, Ashes's recovery picked up pace. With Ember's encouragement, she managed to stand, wobbly but upright, for the first time since her injury. The hospital erupted in celebration. Jamie called in the rest of the staff to witness the moment. Cheers, applause, tears of joy. Ember, proud and excited, danced circles around her mother, her own strength now undeniable. Yet even as hope blossomed, a new question loomed. Was this recovery temporary? Or could Ashes truly heal? The future was uncertain, but for Jamie, for Ember, and for everyone who had come to believe in miracles, one thing was clear. Love had sparked something science could barely explain. And somewhere deep inside the enclosure, Ashes, battered but unbroken, found the will to keep fighting. Not just for herself, but for the tiny life that needed her most. Ashes's improbable recovery soon became the heart of the hospital. News outlets called daily, begging for exclusive interviews, while donations poured in from people moved by the story of the mother Bobcat who'd crawled through hell for her kitten. For Jamie, the attention was both a blessing and a burden. She cared more about Ashes and Ember's well-being than their fame, and every new challenge seemed to remind her how fragile hope really was. Ashes, though now able to stand and even stagger a few uncertain steps, would never fully regain her wild grace. The nerves in her hindquarters had suffered too much. Some days she was energetic, hobbling after Ember as the kitten raced in delighted circles. On other days, her body betrayed her, legs trembling and muscles quivering with exhaustion. Jamie watched the setbacks with a tight chest, never letting herself get complacent. Ember, meanwhile, was growing bolder and stronger. No longer a trembling scrap, she tackled every day with wild energy, stalking feathers, pouncing at shadows, and helping the staff by investigating every sound and scent. Most crucially, she learned fast. Under Ashes's vigilant gaze, Ember began to mimic hunting skills, swatting at dangling strings, crouching low, and even practicing her pounce on unsuspecting crickets that wandered into the enclosure. It was precisely that rapid growth that forced a hard conversation. Jamie called a meeting with Dr. Lin and Mike one evening as the desert sun dipped below the hospital's perimeter fence. The enclosure glowed golden, casting long, tangled shadows over the pair inside. Jamie started carefully. Ember's almost ready to hunt on her own. The protocol says it's time to separate her, to prepare her for release. Wild bobcats need to learn independence. Mike, who'd grown more attached than he would ever admit, looked away. "I know. She's wild. It's what we do." Dr. Lin sighed, flipping through Ember's chart. "If we want Ember to survive out there, she needs to rely on her own instincts. Ashes can't be her crutch forever." Jamie hesitated, her gut warring with her training. "But every time we separate them, even for an hour, Ember refuses to eat. She panics. Ashes regresses. Their bond—" She trailed off, searching for words strong enough to counter decades of rehab practice. Mike added, "It's not just about what's right for Ember. Ashes needs her too. You see how she tries harder when Ember's nearby." Dr. Lin didn't answer immediately. The hospital had always balanced science with compassion, but this situation was new. "Let's run a trial. 1 hour apart every day, gradually increasing. We'll track both of their progress." So the team tried, gently ushering Ember into a separate enclosure filled with hiding places and enrichment toys. The results were immediate and disastrous. Ember paced the walls, ignoring food, her cries echoing through the hospital. Ashes, sensing her kitten's distress, stopped eating altogether, eyes fixed on the door, every muscle tense with silent panic. Jamie kept a detailed journal of each attempt. Day 1, Ember regressed, hiding for hours, refusing prey. Ashes agitated, heart rate spiking, temperature dropping. Day 2, both cats lethargic, appetite poor, grooming less frequent. Reunited, instant improvement, both feeding within 20 minutes, purring, play resuming. The emotional toll on the staff was equally intense. Megan finally snapped during one attempt, slamming her clipboard on the counter. "This isn't working. We're making them miserable for the sake of a protocol that doesn't even account for cases like this." That evening, as Jamie sat outside the enclosure, watching the pair sleep pressed together, she knew they needed a new plan. She pulled Mike aside. "What if we stopped trying to fit them into old boxes? What if we created a space, something between wild and captive, where they could stay together, but Ember could learn to hunt and be free too?" Mike nodded slowly, a rare smile flickering at the edges of his mouth. A protected enclosure, semi-wild. It could work. She'd get real practice, hunting, climbing, hiding, but with her mother's support. We could monitor, intervene only if needed. Jamie pitched the idea to Dr. Lin, outlining the benefits: reduced trauma, real-life training, and a chance to study family bonds in wild animals. To her surprise, Lin agreed. "If we're going to challenge the system, let's do it right. I'll reach out to the sanctuary board. We'll need funding, fencing, monitoring gear, but if anyone can make this work, it's you and your team." Construction on the new enclosure began almost immediately, funded by a surge in donations. Volunteers arrived to help, digging posts under the relentless Arizona sun, stringing wire and camouflaging shelters with brush and rocks. Jamie oversaw every detail, making sure the new space offered both security and the unpredictable wildness that would test Ember's instincts. When the day came to move the Bobcats, the entire staff gathered outside. The enclosure was sprawling, filled with tall grass, shaded hideaways, and pockets of dense thicket. Jamie opened the carrier, heart in her throat. Ashes limped out first, wary but determined, pausing to scent the air. Ember followed close, pausing only to glance back at the staff before bounding into the nearest patch of grass. Over the next days, the team watched in awe. Ashes, though slower, taught Ember how to stalk silently, how to freeze at the faintest sound, how to watch the sky for hawks. Ember's hunting improved by the hour, her confidence blooming as she brought down mice and grasshoppers on her own. But it was their teamwork that stunned the staff most. On several occasions, Jamie observed Ember flushing prey from the brush, driving it toward Ashes, who waited patiently, springing forward for the capture. It was a dance, silent, coordinated, a testament to instinct and trust. At night, the hospital lights cast a soft glow over the new enclosure. Jamie watched the pair resting side by side, Ember's head on Ash's flank, both of them safe but free, teaching each other what it meant to survive and to love on their own terms. The story of Ashes and Ember didn't just stay in Arizona, it spread everywhere. News of the miracle Bobcats reached across the country, then the world, as the videos Jamie and her team posted racked up millions of views. Clips of Ashes limping through the tall grass, Ember learning to pounce and hunt, and, most remarkably, their strange, almost choreographed teamwork became a sensation. The hospital's phones rang with interview requests, and wildlife sanctuaries from as far as Africa and Europe sent messages of awe and congratulations. But as attention grew, So did the debate. In staff meetings, Jamie read aloud letters from kids, scientists, and animal lovers. Some wrote poems. Some donated their allowance. Others, though, challenged the very heart of the experiment. "Is keeping them together really in Ember's best interest?" demanded one email. "She needs to be wild, not coddled." Others countered, "No, they prove animals feel deep family bonds. Let them stay." Social media raged. On one side, traditionalists, biologists, and wildlife managers who'd spent decades arguing that young predators had to be separated from their parents to become truly wild. "If you love wildlife," wrote Dr. Chris Vail, a respected ecologist in a viral thread, "let Ember go. Her instincts will kick in. Family is for pets, not predators." On the other side, animal welfare advocates and compassionate scientists insisted, "We're seeing a new form of wildness. Emotional bonds are as vital as physical survival." Jamie found herself pulled into interviews, radio shows, even a televised town hall where she answered questions live. "You're experimenting with these animals' futures," an audience member challenged. "What gives you the right?" Jamie didn't shy away. "We're learning from the animals themselves," she said, voice steady. "Ashes and Ember are teaching us that survival isn't just about physical strength. Connection, teaching, emotional support. It matters. We can't ignore what's happening right in front of us." At the hospital, the scrutiny intensified. Donors called, worried that the story would hurt the hospital's reputation. Meanwhile, researchers arrived to study the bobcat's behavior, installing cameras and sensors to record every movement. The pressure weighed on Jamie, but she stood by her decision. Mike and Megan closed ranks around her, refusing to let the world's noise drown out what was unfolding just yards away. And what was unfolding was something no one had expected. Instead of growing dependent, Ember flourished. With her mother's guidance, she became a hunter in her own right. Fast, smart, and fearless. She would disappear into the tall grass for hours, re-emerging with a vole or grasshopper clenched triumphantly in her teeth. At night, she'd curl up beside Ashes, the line between teacher and student blurring more each day. But it was what happened next that truly stunned the scientists. Jamie, reviewing the camera footage late one night, saw something unprecedented. Ember and Ashes hunting together, but in a way that was almost strategic. Ember would flush prey from one patch of brush, sending it running toward her mother, who waited patiently and then pounced. Other times, Ashes would circle wide, corralling a mouse toward her daughter. Sometimes they even shared the catch, Ashes nudging pieces of meat toward Ember instead of eating first. "Cooperative hunting isn't supposed to happen in solitary cats," Jamie muttered, eyes wide. She called Mike, Megan, and even Dr. Lynn in to watch the footage. They all agreed. This wasn't instinct alone. It was learning, partnership, maybe even affection. Word got out. Wildlife journals published articles with headlines like "Mother-Daughter Bobcats Defy Science" and "Emotional Intelligence in the Wild." Debates raged in online forums. Some scientists praised Jamie's work as groundbreaking and the future of compassionate conservation. Others derided it as emotional projection and dangerous anthropomorphism. The stress built as sanctuary directors, donors, and government officials requested regular reports. "How long will you keep them together?" one asked on a tense Zoom call. "When will you try releasing Ember on her own?" Jamie replied with conviction, "When Ember is ready, and not a moment before." Meanwhile, Ember herself made her opinion clear. One day, the team opened the gate to a side enclosure, a test to see if she'd venture out alone. Ember darted through, sniffing every corner, but within hours she returned, refusing to leave Ashes for more than a few minutes. Whenever separated too long, both cats regressed, eating less, sleeping poorly, growing restless. Megan, watching from the observation hut, shook her head. "I think we've got it backward," she whispered. "Maybe wildness doesn't mean being alone. Maybe it's something you share." Mike, arms folded, just grunted his agreement. Even Dr. Lin, who'd been the strictest about protocols, started to soften. "Let's keep studying. Let's let them tell us what they need." The world kept watching. Every new video drew more attention. Ashes hobbling but proud, Ember sleek and powerful, the two a study in resilience and love. School children sent letters. Animal rescue groups sent money. But the most important supporters were those who simply watched in awe, learning, like Jamie and her team, that the wild had lessons to teach no book could contain. Through it all, Ashes and Ember remained inseparable. Their bond, so unlikely, so hard-won, had become a beacon. The debates would rage on, the cameras would keep rolling. But in the golden hush of the Arizona evening, as mother and daughter hunted and rested together, the only thing that mattered was each other. And somewhere, in that tangled grass, the future of compassionate conservation was quietly taking root. The Arizona sky was a soft, endless blue when the day finally arrived. For months, Jamie, her team, and a legion of supporters had watched Ashes and Ember defy the odds, their story winding its way from tragedy to miracle. The hospital was abuzz with anticipation, everyone moving with nervous excitement as they made final preparations. This wasn't just a release. It was the opening of Ashes Garden, a sanctuary built by hope, donations, and the lesson that compassion and wildness could coexist. Volunteers finished painting the sign at the entrance, hands shaking with pride. Press, scientists, and local families gathered behind a ribbon that shimmered in the breeze. Even reporters who'd once been skeptical now wore soft smiles, notebooks ready to capture whatever would come next. The hospital's social media live stream was counting viewers in the tens of thousands. Jamie stood at the center, heart pounding, remembering the highway, the hospital nights, the debates and doubts. She'd never been so nervous and so sure. Ashes and Ember waited in their travel carriers, their bodies pressed close. Ashes's limp had improved, but she still moved with a slow, deliberate grace, scars glinting through her fur. Ember was a bundle of energy, bright eyes darting, muscles coiled, as if she already knew the world outside was hers to conquer. Jamie crouched beside them, whispering, "You made it. You both did." As Dr. Lin called for quiet, Jamie gave a short speech. Today is about more than two animals. It's about changing what we believe possible, about the power of connection, not just survival. Thank you for trusting us, for trusting them. With a nod, Jamie opened Ashes's carrier first. The Bobcat hesitated, sniffing the new air, sunlight painting her fur gold. There was a murmur through the crowd. No fences here, no glass or steel, just the tall grass swaying in the wild open space. Ashes stepped forward, slow but determined. Her head was high. Ember's carrier opened next, and in a flash, the young Bobcat bounded to her mother's side, brushing close before darting ahead and circling back, her body alive with possibility. They moved together, mother and daughter, through the wild expanse created just for them. The crowd watched in silence, many blinking away tears. Children pointed and gasped as Ember leaped onto a fallen log, Ashes following at her own pace. The pair disappeared, then reappeared, their coats shimmering through sunlight and shadow. "Look at them," Megan whispered, They're not just surviving, they're free. As the ceremony ended, people lingered along the fence, hoping for one last glimpse. Cameras zoomed and flashed, but Jamie was lost in her own world, her heart swelling as she watched Ashes and Ember disappear into the sanctuary's tall grass. She remembered every sleepless night, every moment of doubt, and felt a rush of gratitude that she'd trusted her instincts. Inside Ashes's garden, a new rhythm quickly emerged. Jamie and her team monitored the bobcats via hidden cameras, watching as they explored the nooks and crannies of their new home. The sanctuary, sprawling and wild, offered every challenge Ember would need: thick brush to hide in, trees for climbing, live prey to hunt, and open fields for stalking. Ashes adapted to her new world with cautious determination. She found sun-warmed rocks to nap on and dens to call her own. Though her limp would never fully heal, she moved with surprising confidence, always aware of Ember's location. Sometimes she'd pause, ears pricked, and listen for her daughter's hunting calls. If Ember strayed too far, Ashes would call, a low, musical yowl, and Ember would return, brushing against her before dashing off again. The first week was a learning curve. At times, Ember would attempt a difficult hunt or climb and fail, only to be coaxed and encouraged by her mother's patient guidance. Staff watched as the bobcats slept curled together under the stars, or groomed one another after a long day, their bond unbroken. But the sanctuary was never just about safety. It was designed for challenge and growth. Jamie watched proudly as Ember's hunting skills sharpened. She caught her first rabbit, brought it triumphantly to Ashes, then shared the meal, a rare display of feline cooperation that continued to mystify researchers. The hospital team, now more family than colleagues, celebrated each small milestone. When Ashes was spotted climbing to the top of a rocky ledge, or when Ember brought down a clever squirrel, cheers went up in the staff lounge. Jamie kept her journals filled with notes and sketches, capturing every sign that the wild was returning to both animals. Meanwhile, the outside world responded with awe. Scientists arrived from across the country to observe, many rethinking old theories about animal emotion, family, and learning. "What we're seeing here is more than adaptation," one biologist remarked. "It's renewal, emotional as well as physical." Yet for Jamie, the most powerful moments were quiet ones. Late at night, after the day's bustle, when she would walk the perimeter and listen for the faint rustle of bobcats in the grass. Sometimes she'd hear Ember's high, playful mew or Ashes's deep, contented purr and smile in the darkness, knowing that their journey was shaping more than just two lives. The sanctuary became a place of pilgrimage for animal lovers, school children, and skeptics alike. People left notes at the gate. "Thank you for believing. You changed my mind." Ashes and Ember showed us what love can do. Ash's garden wasn't just a refuge. It was a testament, a living challenge to every old rule that had kept love and wildness apart. On the final night of that first week, as the sun set and the sky turned indigo, Jamie saw the two bobcats together on a distant hill. Ashes slow but dignified, Ember vigilant and wild. Together they melted into the long grass, as if swallowed up by hope itself. And standing there, Jamie understood that, whatever came next, the world was watching not just a recovery, but the beginning of something entirely new. Years passed, and the Arizona sun rose and set over Ashes's garden, each day drawing new life into the sanctuary and carving its lessons deeper into the hearts of those who witnessed its quiet miracles. The world outside kept spinning, politics, storms, and news cycles swirling. But within those fences, time took on its own rhythm, ruled by seasons, by instinct, by the resilient love between a mother and her daughter. Cameras hidden among the mesquite and sagebrush captured scenes few believed possible when the sanctuary first opened. Ashes, still marked by her slow limp and the scars of survival, had not faded into the background, as many predicted. Instead, she thrived, her fur glossy and eyes bright, the pain of her injuries softened by time and her daughter's presence. Ember grew into a sleek, powerful bobcat, her muscles strong, her movements precise, her senses honed by years of learning from the best teacher the wild could offer. But it was not just the two of them anymore. One spring, a new drama played out on the cameras. Ember, no longer a kitten, gave birth to two tiny cubs beneath a tangle of brush. The staff watched in awe and nervous anticipation as Ember licked them clean, her instincts sharpened by everything Ashes had taught her. Ashes, older but still fierce, kept watch nearby, yowling softly if anything. Hawk, coyote, or even a nosy researcher ventured too close. For Jamie, these scenes were almost unbearably moving. She watched from the observation room, notebook in hand, tears prickling at the corners of her eyes as she witnessed 3 generations of bobcats learning, surviving, and thriving together. It was a story written not in words, but in tracks through the dust, in shared kills and grooming sessions, in the soft, secret communications of the wild. The cubs, one male, one female, were bold and playful, wrestling and stalking anything that moved. Ember taught them to hunt, to climb, to vanish at the first hint of danger. Ashes taught them patience and caution, her presence a living reminder that survival meant more than strength. It meant connection. The cubs grew quickly, venturing farther into the sanctuary, always circling back to the safety of their family. Word spread beyond Arizona. Ash's Garden became a model for a new kind of sanctuary, one that prioritized not just physical rehabilitation, but also the emotional and social bonds of its animals. Wildlife centers from across North America sent staff to learn from Jamie and her team. The footage of Ember and Ash's raising cubs, of their cooperative hunting, became required viewing in conservation courses. Textbooks began to change. Diagrams now included social structures, mother-daughter bonds, and the real, measurable impacts of love in wild lives. Jamie herself became an outspoken advocate for compassionate conservation. She spoke at conferences and wrote articles for major scientific journals, always grounding her arguments in the living example of Ashes and Ember. "Animals are not machines," she said on stage at an international symposium. "We can't separate emotion from biology or connection from survival. Family in the wild can mean the difference between life and death. We must adapt our work to honor that truth." There were challenges, of course. Critics questioned whether sanctuaries like Ash's Garden were too interventionist, too soft. But the proof was undeniable. Animals released after time in such sanctuaries were not just surviving, they were thriving, forming bonds and displaying behaviors researchers had only guessed at before. Ash's and Ember's legacy became a rallying cry for a new generation of wildlife caretakers. The sanctuary itself became a pilgrimage site. School groups came, eyes wide with wonder, teachers using the story of the miracle bobcats to teach lessons about resilience, empathy, and the environment. Families walked the perimeter paths, listening for the distant calls of bobcats, reading plaques that told the saga of the highway rescue, the impossible recovery, the birth of the cubs. On the 5th anniversary of their arrival, Jamie hosted a celebration at Ash's Garden. Dozens gathered at sunset. Hospital staff, researchers, volunteers, and visitors from across the country. Children pressed their faces to the fence, hoping for a glimpse. As if on cue, Ashes appeared at the crest of a hill, her silhouette limned in golden light. Ember followed, flanked by her nearly grown cubs. They moved together, a living testament to everything the sanctuary stood for. Jamie stepped forward and spoke, her voice steady and full of gratitude. What we've learned here has changed us all. These bobcats taught us that survival is not just a matter of strength, but of connection. That healing is not just a medical miracle, but an emotional one, and that by honoring the bonds of the wild, we honor something in ourselves. As twilight deepened, the celebration became quiet reflection. Jamie walked the fence line one last time, heart full. She listened to the soft rustle of bobcats moving through the grass, to the chirr of crickets, to the distant familiar purrs and yowls. She thought of that first terrible day on the highway, and how far they had all come. What Ashes and Ember had etched into the wild could never be erased. Their story had become a legend, a lesson in hope, in resilience, and in the power of love to change not just lives, but the very way people saw the world around them. And somewhere, under the vast Arizona stars, 3 generations of bobcats settled together for the night. Family, safe, wild, and utterly, beautifully free. At dawn, Ash's garden shimmered with possibility. Dew beaded on the tall grass and wildflowers, catching the first gold rays of sunlight. The sanctuary was peaceful, but beneath that peace thrummed a current of life and memory, of all that had transpired since the day a battered bobcat mother dragged herself across a highway to save her kitten, now. Their legacy was written not only in their own survival, but in every visitor who walked the winding trails, every student who leaned against the fence and wondered about the secret world just beyond. Years had passed. Ember, once so frail, now led her own small family across the expanse at twilight, muscles rippling, eyes bright with knowledge and trust. At her side, Ashes moved more slowly, but with an unmistakable pride, her limp a badge of resilience rather than defeat. The cubs who had once clung to Ember's side now ranged farther each week, always returning to the safety of their family, their calls echoing through the sanctuary at dusk. It was a place transformed. Ash's garden had grown into more than a refuge. It had become a living classroom, a beacon for what was possible when empathy and science worked together. Jamie, once just a field vet fighting against convention, was now recognized as a leader in a new movement, one that placed compassion at the very center of conservation. She spent much of her time now teaching, welcoming students, new staff, and researchers from around the world. School groups poured in every season, some with little more than curiosity, others already carrying questions about the future of wild places and the animals within them. Jamie greeted each child with the same gentle smile, inviting them to imagine what it must have felt like to be Ashes or Ember. She led tours along the outer trails, pausing at plaques that told the bobcat's story in images and simple words. A mother's love, a daughter's courage, a lesson for us all. Inside the sanctuary, Ashes and Ember became teachers in their own right. Students gathered at observation posts, notebooks open, watching as Ember showed her cubs how to stalk grasshoppers, how to listen for the soft warning of a snake in the brush. Ashes, her movements slower, still joined the group on the best days, demonstrating patience, caution, and the art of persistence. In the evenings, families would sometimes spot all 3 generations together, resting in the golden light, a scene more moving than any lesson Jamie could have given. The impact of their story rippled far beyond Arizona. Wildlife organizations from across the country, and even overseas, modeled new sanctuaries after Ash's garden, emphasizing not just rescue but family, emotional health, and lifelong learning. University courses debated the Ashes Protocol, asking what could happen if animals' emotional needs were always considered alongside their physical ones. Jamie published research, but also essays and stories for children, sharing not just data, but the heart of what she'd learned. The world, it seemed, was finally ready to listen. On a late summer afternoon, a group of college interns hiked the perimeter fence with Jamie, pausing where wildflowers spilled through the wire. One of them, Maria, a shy sophomore with a notebook full of questions, asked, "How do you know when you've done enough?" Jamie smiled, remembering her own doubts and sleepless nights. "You never really know," she answered honestly. "All you can do is listen, to the animals, to your instincts, to each other. And you keep fighting for what feels right, even if it means breaking the rules sometimes." They sat in silence, watching as Ember's cubs tumbled through the grass. The air was filled with cicadas and distant purrs. Maria scribbled something in her notebook, then asked, "Do you think Ashes understands what she started?" Jamie looked out at the sanctuary, the family she'd watched for years. "Maybe not in the way we do, but she knows her family is safe. That matters more than anything." As the years turned, Ashes grew frail. Her limp grew more pronounced. She slept longer and hunted less, but she was never alone. Ember and her cubs remained close, grooming her, bringing her food, curling around her in the cool desert nights. The sanctuary staff made sure she had the softest beds, the safest dens, and all the care she needed. When the day finally came that Ashes didn't wake, Jamie found her surrounded by her family, at peace beneath a stand of mesquite. The news rippled through the sanctuary, and through every person whose life had been touched by her courage. They buried her in a quiet corner, marked by wildflowers and a simple stone that read, "Beloved Mother, fierce heart, forever wild." The loss was real and deeply felt, but as the seasons changed, life in the sanctuary went on. Ember became the matriarch, leading her family with the same mixture of wildness and warmth. School groups still came, listening with wide eyes as Jamie shared the story from the very beginning. The desperate crossing, the rescue, the healing, the bond that changed everything. And in the evenings, when the lights slanted gold over the grass, visitors would sometimes see a bobcat family at play. Ember leading, her cubs bounding after her, and just for a moment, the shadow of a limping, proud old bobcat watching from the hilltop. Legend, some whispered. Memory, others said. But for Jamie and those who knew the truth, it was love. Love so powerful, it changed the way people cared for the wild and for each other. Ashes and Ember's story was no longer just a tale of survival. It was a promise, passed from one generation to the next, that compassion matters, that family is everywhere, and that in listening to the wild heart, we find the best of ourselves. As twilight settled, Jamie closed the gates and walked the trails one last time, her heart full of gratitude. Above her, the stars emerged, silent witnesses to a legacy that would never fade. In Ash's garden, hope and love would forever grow, untamed, unstoppable, and free.